So today's Ask D is, what was the biggest challenge you faced as a new manager and how did you overcome it? So I'm going to share with you my biggest challenges, and there's a few. I think I'm going to share at least 3 or 4 challenges. I'm going to share my responses based on my experience, what I did right. There are things that I didn't do right, what I researched, and what I learned over time that really works. So the number one biggest challenge I faced when I was a new manager was coming in. You know, when you come in, you're pumped, you're ready to get things going. And I thought I could just come in and get the team energized. Especially as a new manager whose team didn't trust me yet, it didn't happen that way. I quickly realized that I needed tactics to get people to trust me, to lead the team, and to get work done. And start with building an energized environment. So there were a few things that I did to really focus on building an energized environment. So first I had to figure out why the energy was where it was. If energy level is low, it might be for many reasons. Your team might be going through the natural stages of team development, which are forming, storming, norming, and performing. Or it could be that their wins aren't being celebrated. It could be other reasons too. There's so many reasons. So you are the one who's going to have to dig deep to go under the surface to understand the why. The only way you can do that is to listen and observe. So start talking to your team and pay attention. Really pay attention. Focus on building a culture where you have meaningful conversations with your team and that you're being transparent. And when you're being transparent, let them know you're concerned about the energy level and get their input. Then you have to be ready to set the example and keep your motivation level and your momentum high. I know there's a lot of times when we're in management positions or leadership positions that it becomes stressful and we're not motivated. But remember that people's morale, it's an individual decision first, and each individual, they're looking at you as their leader. Trust me, they're looking at everything that you do. So understand people's motivation level and give each person, each individual person, a reason to be excited. And don't forget, you also have to focus on your motivation level also. Pay attention to people's attitudes and quiet the noise of the naysayers. Sometimes other people's attitudes can bring the entire team down. You know the saying, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. That's a very true statement. We're always focused on people's skills and their competence, but attitude and interpersonal skills or soft skills, whatever you call them in your organization, is just as important. And as a manager, it's your responsibility to call people on their impact to themselves and to the team. Have discussions and find out what's going on. Provide feedback and set expectations. There's a way to do it, and we'll teach you that later. But let them help come up with some solutions, but make sure they understand how important a change in attitude or a change of attitude is. So let me give you a quick story. I was leading a new team, and they were cohesive as a team, but I was coming in new, and pretty much I was considered an outsider. So I started having one-on-one check-ins with everyone on the team. And there was one person in particular who considered herself the self-imposed leader of the bunch. You know, those happen. I'm going to call her Julie. That's not her real name, but let's call her Julie. Julie, who I later found out had applied for my position, challenged me every step of the way. She was actively talking to other people on the team and dismissing or downplaying every decision I made. And her negative attitude in meetings was really overwhelming. So I had a choice. And thinking about the fact that I needed the team to trust that I could lead them, and I knew they were sitting back and paying close attention to this power play between us. So I had to be very strategic about how I dealt with her. And I had a coach working with me, and I'll tell you the details of how we handled that later. Because this, dealing with negative people, is the number 2 challenge that I'm going to share with you. Another thing you want to do is to start celebrating wins. If you're not already doing that, you have to start. When you celebrate wins, people start to feel good about the work that they do and their individual and team contributions and accomplishments. And then also let people know that you care. Listen to them. Show consideration. Share your story when you failed and when you succeeded. Listen to them without judgment. Let's talk about productivity. The best advice I can give is to keep everyone in the loop. Communicate, 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 and then communicate again, both individually and definitely keep the same message as a team. If you don't have team huddles at least weekly where you talk and as a team to keep everyone in the loop, you're kind of missing out on a great opportunity to keep everyone so that everyone knows the same information. Terrific way to keep everyone informed about weekly goals, everyone's role in accomplishing those goals, identifying how people can work with each other, cover when people are off, and much, much more. There's a lot of productivity information you could share. The second biggest challenge is dealing with negative employees. Negative people can greatly impact the productivity and morale of your team. Sometimes as a manager, you might experience that very vocal employee who's always passionately challenging decisions that leaders make, or they bring up negative situations, or they punch holes in processes that are being introduced. That doesn't always signal that they're negative, even though you might feel that they're being negative. Sometimes that signals passion and concern, and they don't have the self-awareness that their delivery's off. So you want to talk to that employee to figure out if they're truly negative or if they want to help be a part of the solution and they just want you as a manager to see what's really going on. A lot of times you can tell by their body language, or if they always want to focus on the problem and aren't interested in getting to a solution. You also have to ask yourself if this person is always negative or is this an infrequent experience. When you do determine, or if you do determine that you're dealing with a negative employee, you want to do a few things. You want to talk to the employee and share with them specific examples of their negative behavior and how their negative behavior impacts their work and the team's performance. You want to have that first conversation, and it should be a short one that says something like, I'd like to discuss some behaviors that I've noticed and how they impact your performance and the team. Then you share those give specific feedback. You only need one or two examples, and then ask them what's going on. Show compassion. When you show compassion and want to truly understand why someone's behaving in a particular way, guess what? It shows that you care. It shows that you care and you're interested in them as a person. If there are personal issues, you still have to help them to understand that they need to separate their personal concerns from business. But you can ask them how you can help them. And if that's the case, that they are having personal issues, that shows that you care. Now, keep in mind, most people don't like to hear constructive feedback, so they might become defensive. And then also listen, like really listen. They might bring up legitimate workplace concerns and valid points that's impacting their attitude. So you want them to feel genuinely heard. Not that you'll make promises about what actions you're going to take, but you should listen and take what they say into consideration. Don't dismiss it. Take it into consideration what they've said. Also, focus on building solutions to their behavior. Don't always have a punitive approach and be ready to write someone up as your first defense. Most of the time, that's going to continue to build a wedge and create the me versus you separation. And the employee is only going to dig in their heels a little further. And they're going to do that fast. So you want to work with the employee to develop options on how they can turn their behavior or attitude around. You want to always see if the employee is not willing to change his or her behavior and continues their negative attitude. And hopefully you've been documenting some specific observable behaviors. And when I say observable behaviors, I'm saying it's not things you've heard about or thought happened. It's things that you've observed. Then it may be time to move toward progressive discipline, which, is hard to do, but sometimes necessary. What's important to note here is that others are watching. And if you don't address the negative behaviors on the team, your employees will either A, think they can behave the same way, B, become unmotivated because they're working hard and bringing their A game while others are allowed to behave poorly, or C, lose trust and respect for your ability to manage. So you remember before I told you about Julie. We went through these steps and she shared something with me. She told me she applied for my position and she felt she was qualified and was disheartened and kind of frustrated she didn't get promoted. And I sympathize with her because I've been in that same position before. But at the same time, it didn't justify her behaving in the ways she did. I shared with her the impact of her attitude and actions to her own performance and to the team. We worked together to develop solutions, and it was surprising to me that one of her solutions was to get more involved on different committees that were outside of the department so that she can gain more experience. So I thought about it for a while, and on a different meeting, I told her I thought that was a great idea, but I needed her to show that she was a leader among her peers first. So we developed actions she had to take and a timeline to meet them by. One of the actions that she came up with was to talk to others on the team, find out what the team's concerns were about processes or practices that we had that were already in place, and bring them to me with workable solutions. So do you see what happened there? Julie turned into a solution maker instead. We agreed that she had to exhibit some leadership capabilities. I think it was for at least 90 days before I would work with her to help her find a committee that she would be excited about and be able to participate on, which we ended up doing. So that's just an example. Just because an employee is negative, there are options to how you manage them. If they remain negative, they may need to go elsewhere. If they're neutral, or if they change their behavior or at least suppress their negativity and their productivity meets expectations, that might be fine also. Or you might be able to develop them and encourage them to become a part of the solution. So let's talk briefly about the third challenge. I told you there were 3 of them, which is, and this is a big one, learning how to adjust your communication, behavior, and thinking style to every person you manage so that you can get the best out of them. And I know that sounds really overwhelming, and it can be difficult, but it's necessary. So every person that you manage has a different innate way of behaving, communicating, and thinking. And there's so many different typologies and tests out there. There's Myers-Briggs, whole brain, true colors. And we've kind of looked at all those and condensed them into 4 basic styles. And so we're going to talk about those 4. One is a thinker, and that's someone who is analytical, and they're going to ask a lot of questions about why. They need to understand logic, how logical things are. Another one is an organizer, someone who thinks in terms of steps and processes. Things follow a certain step, and they question how things get done. A third one is an innovator. That's someone who's creative and innovative in their approach, and they want to challenge the status quo. They want to try something new and different. They want to meet business objectives in a way that haven't been met before. And fourth, you have a relator, who is someone who's really more focused on the people and the team and how people work together and wanting to create harmony. The challenge is understanding each person's style and how to motivate and inspire them to do their best work. You have to communicate differently with each person in a way that helps them understand what you're trying to convey. So let me give you an example, and I'll use myself as an example. I'm an innovator all day long. I'm an innovator. I like to take risks. I'm spontaneous. I'm creative, and I'm not very detailed. So when people share a lot of details with me as the first thing they share with me, my eyes kind of glaze over. You need to spoon feed me the details. I'd rather listen to the overall goal or plan, not the details initially of how each step will get done. But conversely, if I'm managing someone that's an organizer, then they need me to walk through steps and details. So I have to adjust to what they need. Because if I only share high-level information, they would still have questions, which could be very frustrating to them. So I often have to plan my discussions and map out detailed steps so that I can give it to them, because that's just not the natural way that I communicate. Now, all of these challenges and how you navigate through them builds trust with your team and sets the tone for how you'll manage. And let's quickly talk about trust. There's a man, Dr. Dwayne Toy Jr. He talked about trust. He did a dissertation. It's called A Construct of Trust. And he categorized it into three components. So the three components are having the capacity to trust, which depends on people's life experiences based on past experiences, what they've dealt with before with people or a particular person, and are they willing to open themselves up? Another component is the perception of competence, which is really important in the workplace because people need to perceive that you are competent enough and that you have the ability to manage them in a competent way, be efficient and effective. And the third component is the perception of intent. Now, intent is huge, but oftentimes it's the impact that people pay attention to. So I want to add to a little bit to that when you're talking about your team trusting you, sometimes they don't see your intent as much as they see the impact of your actions. So you have to be very careful and make sure that you align both. I wanted to just take a minute to talk about trust because as a manager, that's really the foundation of how your team is going to build. And it's very, very important. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to my challenges. And as one of my business guides says, leaders must be close enough to relate to others, but far enough ahead to motivate them. That comes from John C. Maxwell. Okay, I'm out. It's your time to go and shine. Thank you.